Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us to talk about the Energy and Water Reporting and Benchmarking Program in Ontario and your filing obligations for 2024. We're going to get you through this in 30 minutes. Last year, my record was 29, so we'll see if we can beat that this year, and we'll give you a bit of a crash course on what needs to be done for the program this year. Just a little bit about us. I'm Justin. I'm with Keller Engineering. We're a multidisciplinary engineering firm and building science firm that does structural, mechanical, building envelope, electrical, energy auditing, and energy reporting throughout the province of Ontario and nationwide. We've been doing this for over 40 years, and we're putting together a little primer here to help some of our clients through the energy reporting guidelines. So what are we going to do today? We're going to go through what the program is, how your building can report the data, and then we'll also walk you through how our team does it. So for those unfamiliar, the ins and outs of the regulation 50618 was that by 2023, the goal was to have most privately owned buildings, which are greater than 50,000 square feet, reporting their gas, electricity, and water consumption to the ministry. The anticipated goal of this disclosure of the building was that it would motivate corporations to compete with one another to strive to improve their buildings. It would allow property and financial markets to compare building efficiencies, and it would show the benefits of investing in energy efficient technologies, and then would also help compare the energy performances of similar buildings in local neighborhoods. All of this is to a bigger purpose. Of the reason of why is because this is an incremental step in helping save the planet. Energy reporting and benchmarking isn't new. It's a standard initial first step to making sure everybody's looking at the data that they have and figuring out how best to compare it to their neighbors. The biggest idea is that obviously if you and your neighbor have almost similar buildings and one of you is using twice the energy per square footage, it's in everybody's interest to understand how that one overusing building should be able to lower it. So the only way you get to that is you report your data usage and then you compare it and benchmark it against the other ones. Municipalities such as Ottawa and Toronto are looking for voluntary participants to get this data in so that they can help participate in their decarbonization efforts. And this is buildings, not only when they're being built, but their operation is a huge part of the greenhouse gas problem within this country and the planet. And this is an important way that we can help make it better. The reporting requirements from the legislation are to keep your building data up to date, such as who owns the building, who's responsible for reporting to it, whether any changes result in square footage modifications, or whether it changes the property use of the building. You're going to report the consumption of the amount of water, electricity, gas, and any other utilities. If you use steam or if you have a cogen facility, that would also be reportable. You're supposed to verify the building data, and the first year you do it, and every 5 years if you're over 100,000 square feet. And then you report that data through the Energy Star Portfolio Manager, which is an interactive tool managed by Natural Resources Canada. So which buildings must report? As I mentioned, it was brought in a staggered approach since 2018, but we've reached the full increment of the staggering, and we're now at July, as of last year, all buildings, multi-residential or commercial, over 50,000 square feet, have to report their data usage with limited exemptions. So this has been brought in since last year, and everybody's in the same boat now. So what are the exemptions? The government's certainly not going to pass laws that they have to follow. So if your building is rented out, more than 50% of your building is rented out to a public agency, then you don't have to report your usage. If more than 10% of your building is a data center or a TV studio or a trading floor, you don't have to report. Similarly, if you're a manufacturing or a commercial building, more than 10%, you don't have to report. And the idea there is that if you're a company that makes widgets and dies and you're an energy intensive business within the building, then you're not going to have to report your energy usage because that would be out of line with what's typically applied to that building. The last exemption is if you're newly constructed in that reporting year. So a brand new building, unless you have a year's worth of data, will not have to report. The verification is a little gray in the legislation of what it needs, but it asks for all data to be verified by a certain type of professional. So if your building is over 100 square feet, the report information must be verified by a certified professional in the first year that you report and every 5 years thereafter. So buildings that reported and when the program first started, 250,000 square foot or greater commercial buildings have to do their re-verification this year, same as larger residential buildings. Verifying with your data on an annual basis is voluntary, and verifying your data if you're smaller than 100 square feet, is voluntary. And these verifications can happen through professional engineers, building engineering technologists, building operator certificate, building science specialists of Ontario, and a few other certified energy auditors and other professionals with experience in the neighborhood can validate your data. So why, not just to save the world, but what's the benefit of doing reporting and benchmarking itself? The idea is that if your building is going through this process, you'll save money by tracking your usage. First of all, the idea that if you're monitoring something, you can decrease its usage or change its usage. You're going to be identifying energy and water efficiency opportunities. There's a certain amount of buildings that we'll look at every year that will say, oh, your water usage never goes to zero, even at 3 in the morning. And that's typically indicative of a water leak. So just looking at this data can help you find energy usage saving opportunities. And the most important part about benchmarking is being able to compare your information to other buildings. This is also where, as much as you're submitting the data up to the ministry and to the province, there's a voluntary program to submit them to each municipality as well, who are giving a little bit more tailored information and feedback about how you can use your data better within your regions. Cities are using this data for decarbonization efforts to try and figure out where to help buildings and where to give them money and support them through programs of decarbonization. So this reporting, you can do it yourself. It's slightly more involved than creating an Amazon account and buying something from Texas, but it's certainly less involved than filing your taxes. So there's guides online that will walk you through it step by step. I'm going to give you some high-level information here about how to do it on your own, and then I'm going to show you how we do it as well at Keller, and you can have a picture of where you might want to go from here. The first step is to determine if you have to report, and it's designed to be simple. This is a really great idea if you are a commercial building manager and you have a summer student in your office. This is perfect for them. Or if you have a condo diehard on your board that really likes to get into the nitty-gritty, you just found a 15-hour project for them to do and really bring back. So there certainly is benefit to having this being done in-house. So here's the process effectively. Once you define your deadline, you got to figure out the process is you're going to collect the data, you're going to verify the data, and report the data. Now, this is whether you hire somebody to do it or whether you do it yourself. This is how you go through the process. The data collection starts with your EWRB number. And the EWRB number is your unique anonymous identifier that you're going to be using to provide your data and feedback and get feedback from the ministry. This is coming out typically by letters that were initially sent out about every year, and now it's coming out more and more in email. And this will help you determine if you have to report. If you received one of these letters, the ministry thinks you have to report. It'll include your EWRB number, or sometimes it'll just show up in the email of the last registered manager of the building. These letters have been coming out, and the emails have been going out to some people. And some people are receiving them, and some people are finding that they're going to Unit 101 of their building. Some are going to old property managers, some are going to the wrong property managers, but the information is getting out there. We asked EWRB Communications with the government if you haven't received a letter, if you have to report, and they've said yes. The obligation's on the building to report. I haven't seen what the EWRB police look like just yet, but certainly there are buildings that are, if you're over 50,000 square feet, then the legislation applies to you. It used to be a lot easier to get the EWRB, harder to get the EWRB number, but right now you can just call up the ministry and they'll look up your building and provide you with your number. So after you've got your number and you know the code that's going to get you into the system, you got to start collecting your data. First, we want to look at what the building looks like itself, and you need the gross floor area of your data. Because when we talk about comparing building to building, we're comparing square foot of livable and usable space to square foot of energy usage per square foot of livable space to other buildings. So what we want to do is we want to first take out the parking garage, look at the whole building, and take out the parking garage. So this can happen if you're looking at architectural drawings. Typically on the front page of an architectural drawing, there'll be what's called the building matrix. And in there, you can see the gross area of the building and typically the gross area of the parking space after that. Those two bits of information you're going to need for filing your report, so you put those aside. If you don't have your building drawings, like most older buildings in Ontario, you can always go to your most recent insurance assessment. On page 1 or page 2, it's usually right there in the front talking about the usable size of the building and any parking area. So you've got your EWRB number, you've got your gross floor area, and next is to figure out your utility usage. There's two ways to do this. I think there's the hard way and the slightly harder way. The slightly harder way is to look at all your bills. You got to go through all your bills, and you have to get a water bill, a gas bill, electricity bill, steam bill. You don't always just need the account numbers. You need sometimes the billing periods, and you need to get all the data out of them, because effectively you're putting in how many kilowatt hours or cubic meters of utility you use for any given month. That's the data that you're going to need to get up to the ministry at some point. So you need to find all your bills. You need to find 13 of them, because you need them for every month, and you need to roll over and make estimates at the end of each month, at the end of each year. So if you have all your bills, you put them in a spreadsheet, and that's a good place to start to make sure your data is all in one place for validation. When you look at your data after you do that, that's when you would validate, verify it, and make sure it all makes sense and there's not an issue in the billing, or one bill is excessively high and another one is excessively low, and maybe they need to be averaged out. There's guidelines from the ministry about how to verify the billing and how to bridge those gaps, and those are all available online. This harder way, the less hard way, I guess, is to go straight to the utility. Now, going straight to the utility is effectively going to Hydro, Ottawa, or London Hydro, or Toronto Gas, or Enbridge, and saying, we're representing this building, or I'm the property manager for this building, or I own this building, and I'm here to ask the data. The legislation says they have to provide you the data, but they don't all have the same way of providing it to you. So some will ask you to fill out this online form. Some will ask you to send a letter or an email. Some will ask you to call Winifred and talk to Winifred and give her your building information, looking at you, Cornwall, and send out and they'll send you back the data. Sometimes you'll get the data back in terms of very clear spreadsheets. Sometimes you'll get the data back in terms of a one email. Sometimes you'll get the data back with a letter. Sometimes the data will have holes in it. Sometimes it will be perfect data. Sometimes they'll charge you $40 for asking for the data. Some will get it back to you in 2 days, and some will take 3 months. So we work with 29 different utilities across the province, or utility representatives across the province, and none is alike, and none are perfect, except Enbridge. Enbridge is pretty perfect. They get to the data really easily and quickly. So some of them, you'll get back just a straight letter here, and it'll list you all the data. And if you look here, they've listed a very helpful 7 months of data, which is exactly what you need to report 12 months of usage. So what do the utilities provide? This is what I say. This is what Ottawa Hydro provides back here. You get this spreadsheet, and the grand important information to get out of here is there's 12 cells that you need to pull the numbers out of to report the data back. And I say this is slightly easier because at least you get the data. If you're trying to find 13 bills, if you haven't kept the best records over the last years, this is probably an easier way to do it. Interpreting the data, as I mentioned, sometimes you get data back and it has big holes in it, and you have to effectively normalize that data or interpret how you're going to fill it in, because your responsibility is to submit estimates or exact usage of all 12 months of data. All right, so you've got your EWRB number, you've got your gross floor area, you've got your data such as it is, you've finessed it in the way that you're supposed to according to the guidelines, and now it's time to submit it to the Energy Star Portfolio Manager. So Energy Star Portfolio Manager is a online service that many governments throughout all the world use to simplify reporting and organization of data. Think of it as a database that municipalities and companies can buy licenses to make us use. And so it's it's a giant tool where if you wanted to say every single thing about your building, you could put in. So we're just going to be putting in 3 pieces of information on the utility usage and how we got there. As I mentioned, this is a little bit, I'm going to do this quick in the idea that there's guides online. This is slightly more complicated than doing a little Amazon setup, but this is how the sausage gets made in terms of how you set up Energy Star accounts. You need to set up an account for yourself as a user and one for each building. You also have to set up one for each meter within the building, but it's not hard. It's pretty straightforward. So there, as I mentioned, there's a simplified guide for how to set this up, but you need to first create a user profile. You need to create a profile for each of your buildings. So if you're a commercial property manager with many buildings, or if you're a condominium manager who's reporting for all the buildings within there, you can add properties within your building. From each building, you're going to add a separate meter for each utility that you're going to be putting in. The meter, it goes pretty straightforward once you do it. You're going to be putting in the name of the meters and the type and the locations. You're going to add the meter data that you've collected now from each utility into the data. You're going to put every month in all by itself. And this is a good time to mention, if you're using sub-metering, when we go to the utility, the utility is before the sub-meter. So even if you have sub-metering on the gas within your building, it still all goes through Enbridge first. So we get the number first from Enbridge, and it doesn't need to divide between units. It wants to look at it and say bulk compared to all the square footage, how much are you using. So after you've got all your data in and you've got it every meter broken out, you've put the data into every meter, you will need to do the important step of verification, which as a verifier, I wish was a little harder, but it's not. It's you check a box, you say the data has been verified, and suddenly it's been verified. And then you select that you want to report for EWRB, and at this point that you would also select that you want to be part of the voluntary programs to give your data to the municipality. And there's a lot of information out there right now on what the municipalities are going to do with that data, but most importantly, they're going to give you a very clear and concise breakdown of where they think your building is compared to all other buildings, and they're going to give you. Them having your information will allow them to help you more over the next few years. So this is where you decide whether to enroll in those programs. We highly recommend that you do. And after that, you submit the data. You go through, you clicked all the boxes, you put them all up, and you're about to complete your annual reporting. And once you've reported, they give you some really good information back. No, they don't. They just send you an email and say, congratulations, you're finished reporting. I think that's the biggest weakness of the program right now, that it's only asking you to report. It's not doing a lot with the benchmarking just yet, but at least you've got the data. The data goes into a database that's available for everybody to download anonymously, and we're putting a lot of work into pulling some information out of that database that I'm going to show you from here. If you've submitted through the city portals, however, you will get a scorecard with respect to your greenhouse gas intensity and usage, and it's very good data. So if you ever want to look at all of the data over the last years, it's all available. They just don't email it out to you in a readable format. If you want to go grab the data through your anonymized EWRB number, you go to data.ontario.ca. You can download the whole year's data. You plug in your EWRB number, and you can find out where it is. You can also sort that data by partial area code, partial postal codes, and that can tell you what you can do with this data. Now, I'm being a little facetious when I say it's easy to understand, because this is the 6,000 line Excel spreadsheet that this data is posted in. So if you did want to go look at it, you'd have to use your EWRB to find your number and your data. You'd need to go to the columns that are so clearly marked EU_UI1 and EU_UI2 that would tell you your usages. And so at least you know what you've reported there. And then to compare that to your neighbors, you need to filter by postal code, and you'd find there'd be one down here, and then one up here again, and then one all over. And that would tell you what your neighbors look like. And if you wanted to know what more of your neighbors look like, let's say in your municipality in general, you'd have to do a lot larger search through the data. And it's just that easy, I swear, to tell how good your data is performing. But as I mentioned, if you submit through the municipalities, they're going to do a lot of this for you. and they're gonna help you analyze this data. We do that too. I think we can do it a little bit better than the province is certainly giving your data back here. How we do it is effectively running through the exact same processes that I walked you through about how you can handle it yourself. But we do it through an initial setup. So first we're going to onboard your building. We're going to get you all the information in a set it and forget it approach. We're going to have you sign up to the program. We're going to get your insurance appraisals. We're going to get your utility information. Because some utilities need more than just the account number. Some want to know the address of the building. Some want to know the name of the person who receives the bill. So we're going to gather all that information from your bills. We're going to set up your account. And then we're going to provide an ongoing service of verification and reporting. So once we've gathered all the owner contact information and building information, we take it from there. We're going to find out if you're exempt, because the ministry sometimes sends this out in a shotgun blast. There's certainly some buildings that are getting notices to report that don't need to report. If that's the case, we provide a note that you're exempt, and we fare thee well, and we move you out of the program. We register your data with the ministry. We do any assessments of the building that we think are required. We gather the water consumption information. We fill in the holes and apply the guidelines to it. And then we will do our verification. And we do the verification every year, not just every 5 years. And then we submit the data through the Energy Star Portfolio Manager. What you get from us doing that is you get the confirmation of submittal. We get year-over-year action if required. So we'll provide you a comparison about how your building is doing in terms of overall water usage or energy usage since last year. And then we'll also provide you with a comparison report. So to do this, what do we need? We first have an agreement. We also look for a signed letter of authorization so that we can talk to the utility on the building's behalf. We're looking for one bill from each utility of any year, and then the assurance appraisal. And once we have all that information, we can start going. We do about 600 of these a year out of the 6,000 that were done in the province last year. And the way we do it is we have a mechanical engineer supervising a bunch of students, and they're all very good at the job, but it is a little, as you've seen there, if it can be monotonous for one building, imagine how monotonous it can be for 600. The students work with the utilities, work back and forth with Winifred, and we'll fill out the online forms and organize the data and get it back and process it through our mechanical engineer. Our mechanical engineer will look to fill in all the gaps and apply the guidelines to the data, and then we'll submit it back up to the ministry. So we're putting together a program here that allows us to efficiently do this. Now, as I mentioned, the ministry provides you a letter back that says that you've submitted the data, but we can take it a bit further. So we can take that data that you've submitted, we can compare it to the data that's been published, not just for your region, but for all buildings in Ontario that was published out by the data. And we run it through our database, and we provide you back with a 2-page report about your building year over year. This report contains a lot of information, including your energy usage year over year, and showing how you're performing in every month compared to the last years that we've reported. We can also look at water, and we can contextualize data a little bit. Certainly it's fun looking through some of the buildings over the past 6 years and seeing the spike in water usage when COVID happened in March. As people stopped moving to the office and started moving home, we can certainly see some data that's like, oh, that's where everybody was flushing the toilets for 24 hours a day. That was fun. We look into the data too. We look at your region by not just your neighborhood of area code, but your broader area code too. So we can look at not just your neighborhood, but also the other buildings like yours in the industry, and we compare that, and we give you a little bit of a grade about where your building is compared to other buildings in your sector and what they're reporting back. This is all anonymized, so we don't know which buildings there are that you're reporting to, but we do know a few things. We know, like, if you're in a multi-level residential unit, we're going to be comparing you to other multi-unit residentials within your region. We can also look more broadly, if required, and seeing how your building's performing throughout the entire province. We do that by breaking down which sector you're in, breaking down the percentage cohort, and giving you a grade assigned to that cohort. A little bit has changed this year as well in terms of the legislation. So not only do all buildings now over 50,000 square feet have to report, there's nobody new coming in. The municipalities are getting really good at providing a lot more context back, which I think is really great. So there's a lot more municipal programs. If you are, I know Ottawa really led the way in municipal programs last year, but certainly anything in the GTA and Toronto as well, and Southern Ontario, most larger municipalities have programs that you can opt into as well. The deadline is fast approaching. Some utilities, as I mentioned, will get you back the data within 2 or 3 days. Some utilities take a few more months. Some utilities have questions. So it's important to start right now. We've already made about 75% of our data requests out for the day, out for the time. If you've engaged with us before, we're still moving ahead. We have a lot of long-term 5-year and 3-year agreements. So if you have those agreements with us, we've already made your request on your behalf. If you haven't and you wish for us to help, please reach out as soon as you can so that we can get the wheels moving and the more students working on this. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us at Keller Engineering or EWRB at kellerengineering.com. And or you can reach out to myself as well, Jay Tudor at Keller Engineering. So that's the whole thing. I did it in record time this year, guys. Just 28 minutes, crushing it. Couple questions from the chat. Somebody's saying it's a dumb question. We'll see how that goes. Dumb question, but do you have calculated the square footage of blocks of stacked townhouses, or does this only pertain to towers in condo land? Great question, in fact. So the legislation is a little vague here. It says any building over 50 square feet. So I'm going to use that precise description to say 2 things. If you have a townhouse block that's over 50,000 square feet, on absolute paper you qualify. There's nothing that says townhouses are excluded. However, every conversation that we've had with the ministry says, look, you can't reasonably do anything with townhouse data. So there's a lot of townhouses that are asking for exemptions. And to be a townhouse block that's over 50,000 square feet, you're likely in the GTA or surrounding area, and you have maybe 25 blocks, townhouses, and they're all independently energy served, so it's a little bit harder to do. What I suggest is if you do have a townhouse block, then when you connect all the units in that block, in that building that are attached, so if you have 4 units over here and 4 units over here, that doesn't count. But if you have a 25-unit townhouse block, then I would suggest reaching out to the ministry and asking for an exemption. We've seen that happen beforehand because that doesn't seem like the type of data they're trying to get. But technically, you have to report, but we've been successful getting an exemption. The other aspect that I want to put in here is that it's not just, when we talk about condo land, there's certainly some condominiums with multiple towers and all within one registered condominium. The legislation is looking for, and the utilities are able to provide, the comparison between towers. So you have to actually do 2 reports for that condo tower if it has 2 towers, let's say. And that's actually a great idea. When you look at it, these are 2 buildings that were likely built around the same time of similar construction materials and have similar usage. And it's the perfect thing to compare, why is this building spending so much more on water or on hydro than the other building? So you can do a little bit of internal benchmarking there as well. And I think that's a really good part of the system here as well. Hi, Jason. My name is Justin, but thanks for saying it. Hi, Jason. You consistently refer to buildings. This may also apply to condo townhomes. Is that correct? Perfect. Exactly the same question that I just got there. It does apply to condo townhomes if you are big enough. So a giant condo townhome block. And if you are in that case and everything is independently metered, so each unit owner pays for their own gas, each unit owner pays for their own electricity, each unit owner has their own forced air furnace inside that they're responsible to replace, I would put a big asterisk beside that. And before I went back out and reported all the data or went to the utilities, I would look for an exemption on that one. The other thing to put in here, because condo lands come up again, is that if you have a shared building and that shared building is big enough, it would also need a separate separate utility report to be provided. Now, if that shared building is part of one building, then that would just fall under the initial square footage of the first one. We are an 8-block townhome complex with the largest block being 33,000 square feet. Would we still be required to report? Safina, thanks for coming to the seminar. I hope it was interesting, but no, you don't actually have to report. Is it okay to put 11 entries since one bill contains consumption of 2 months? Yes and no. So if you have a bill that has 2 months on it, you're going to have the data, but you're going to want to spread it out when you get to the the Energy Star Portfolio Manager. So if you have, let's say, 100 cubic meters, 100 cubic meters, 100 cubic meters, and 200 cubic meters, the guideline says you should take that 200 meters, that's for 2 months, and spread it out over 2 months because it wants as normalized data as possible. That's part of the verification process, and that's what they're looking for you to do. Because otherwise, your data will stand out a little bit in the chart. How much will it cost to hire your company for the project? We cap at $500, so there's no building that we do more than $500, and the price just comes down from there, depending on the data that you give us. Or we certainly have some that get bulk pricing if you're looking at multiple buildings through a corporation or a property management firm or a REIT. We just come down from there. We do more of these than anybody else, so the efficiency of the cost is associated with that we do so many of them. The only other thing to keep in mind is that some municipalities, with respect to price, have like the municipality appeal this year passed the legislation that they want $40 for every data request. So that's extra and on top of any utility, any pricing that we do. We just put it as a flow through. Any of plans to change the submission process? Would it be easier for the utilities to provide these information to the government directly? Absolutely, it'd be easier. It'd be so great if they did it. There's nothing official. I don't see it happening. It'd be great if they did. I assume there's an aspect of privacy there, but that's for smarter people than me to talk about. I think it'd be great if they did. They could really streamline this process, but I don't see that in the future. I wish they did. I think that's all the questions that we have. As I mentioned, happy to get this started for you. Also, if you look on our website, we've listed the steps. We have if you do Keller Engineering, EWRB, you'll see how our team does it. We've also posted a guide of how you can do it yourself. So it's all there if you want to go through it. But if not, give us a call, EWRB, Keller Engineering, or Jay Tudor at Keller Engineering. Thank you very much, and we'll talk to you soon.